In the fall of 2015, Sony Pictures Animation released another theatrical animated sequel with Hotel Transylvania 2. Sometime after the first movie, Mavis gives birth to a boy named Dennis, who Dracula hopes has vampire genes. When Dennis is about to turn 5, Mavis considers relocating herself, Johnny and Dennis to Johnny's hometown because she considers the hotel unsafe for her son. Desperate to keep his family in the hotel, Dracula employs some of his friends to take Dennis on a road trip across Transylvania to bring his vampire side out. But when all else fails, Dracula is forced to call on his old-fashioned father, Vlad, for help. Genndy Tartakovsky, who directed the first movie, discussed the possibility of a sequel in October 2012, saying that while people were already talking about continuing the story, writing had not yet begun. He noted that the film's universe offered many entertaining ideas to explore and described it as a ripe world. The following month, a sequel was officially greenlit with a planned release date of September 25, 2015. On March 12 of 2014, it was confirmed that Tartakovsky would return to direct the sequel after initially being unable to commit because he was developing an animated adaptation of Popeye, a project that was unfortunately shelved. Tartakovsky also suggested that Adam Sandler have greater creative control over the sequel than he did on the first film, though he noted that Sandler could sometimes be challenging to collaborate with. There are two bits of trivia to note about the making of this film. One is that rapper CeeLo Green, who voiced Murray the Mummy in the first movie, was not asked to reprise his role after he faced charges for drugging a woman sometime before the first movie came out. As a result, Sony brought on comedian Keegan-Michael Key to voice Murray not just in this movie, but for the remainder of the franchise.
But the only way they know the real us is if we show the real us.
I got this. Frank, Wayne, Griffin, just try not to faint.
The other notable trivia thing is that Sandler wasn't the only hard egg while making the sequel, as Tartakovsky stated that legendary comedian Mel Brooks, who provided the voice of Vlad, was pretty hard to work with himself. Getting into some ideas for the film, instead of Mavis inviting Vlad over to see Dennis, Dracula and Frankenstein were supposed to personally visit Vlad to ask for his help in making Dennis get his fangs, and Vlad was also supposed to have his right-hand bat and the movie's de facto villain, Bella, destroy the hotel when he finds out that monsters and humans have been coexisting there before soon seeing how wrong he was and redeeming himself. Both of these plot elements were in the film's junior novelization. Other things to note is that they brought back two actors from the first movie for two new roles. John Lovitz, who voiced Quasimodo in the first movie, voiced the Phantom of the Opera for the sequel, and Rob Riggle, who voiced the skeleton husband in the first movie, voiced Bella for movie number 2. For the soundtrack, the composer of the first movie's score, Mark Mothersbaugh, signed on to also compose the music for the sequel. Plus, the girl group Fifth Harmony made a song for the film called I'm in Love with a Monster. When the film came out on September 25, 2015, it got pretty mixed reviews from critics, with an approval rating of 57% on Rotten Tomatoes. Max Nicholson of IGN awarded it a score of 6.5 out of 10 and said that, while Genndy Tartakovsky's animation is top-notch, Hotel Transylvania 2 doesn't live up to the first Monster Mash. For the box office, it managed to do better as it grossed out $169.7 million in North America and $303.5 million in other countries for a worldwide total of $473.2 million. It also got nominated for some rewards like some Annie Awards in the categories of Outstanding Animated Effects in an Animated Production, Outstanding Character Design in an Animated Production, and Outstanding Storyboarding in an Animated Production. Other nominations included a Visual Effects Society Award for Outstanding Visual Effects in an Animated Feature. It only won 3 awards, which were a Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Animated Movie, a People's Choice Award for Favorite Animated Movie Voice with Selena Gomez as Mavis, and a Teen Choice Award for Choice Music, Song from a Movie or TV Show with I'm in Love with a Monster. Some months later, the movie was released on digital platforms on December 22, 2015, before getting released 3 weeks later on DVD and Blu-ray in both 2D and 3D on January 12, 2016. As for my thoughts on the movie, I at first thought the sequel was okay and I liked the third half where the stakes were raised higher, but over time, I began to see it as the weakest of the movies because of the many plots crammed into the film, the main characters often behaving rather underhandedly, and I wish Vlad had more involvement with the story than in the third half. If any of you like the film, that's fine. But personally, I just consider it a movie with very few positive qualities. Hotel Transylvania 2 is a sequel that can go either way if you're a fan or non-fan of the franchise. Before I talk about the next movie, I feel as though I should talk about the work of horror author Robert Lawrence Stein, or as he's known by his pen name, R.L. Stein. This guy has made a long list of books entitled Goosebumps, which are horror stories geared more to kids and teenagers. And when I say long list, I'm not exaggerating, because he has made more books than any other author I know. Soon enough, these stories would end up getting adapted into a TV show that ran from 1995 to 1998. When I was a kid, I've managed to watch a handful of episodes when the show was appearing on Cartoon Network, and who can forget about that creepy as heck theme song? I remember my family owned a copy of the book Stay Out of the Basement. Never read it though. Soon enough though, Stein's work would be adapted into the big screen with the 2015 movie, simply called Goosebumps. It's about a teenage boy named Zach Cooper and his mother moving to Madison, Delaware, where he soon meets famous author R.L. Stein and accidentally unleashes the monsters from his Goosebumps book manuscripts, and they go wreak havoc among the town while being led by the maniac puppet Slappy, forcing Zach, Stein's daughter Hannah, and Zach's new friend Champ to band together to stop the monsters and imprison them in a newly made manuscript from Stein's old typewriter. In the mid-1990s, George A. Romero wrote a script for a movie adaptation of the very first Goosebumps book, Welcome to Dead House, which was sadly rejected and is now kept at the University of Pittsburgh. Soon though, the success of the Goosebumps show on Fox Kids sparked interest in producing a feature film based on the franchise. In 1998, Tim Burton was attached to direct a potential Goosebumps movie for 20th Century Fox. At the time, Fox Family Films president Chris Meledandri suggested that a theatrical adaptation would allow the studio to tell a story on a much larger scale than what television could accommodate. Despite early development, the project ultimately stalled because the studio could not settle on a satisfactory script or decide which book from the series should serve as the basis for the film.
We'll be closing in 2 minutes.
A decade later, in 2008, Columbia Pictures acquired the rights to develop a Goosebumps film. Producers Neil H. Moritz and Deborah Forte, who had previously worked on the Goosebumps television series, were brought on to oversee the project. Screenwriters Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski were initially hired and produced an early script. Rather than adapting a single book, they decided to create an original story. They felt the individual novels were too short to sustain a feature film and instead conceived a meta-style narrative in which author R.L. Stein writes a story and the monsters would escape into the real world. The screenplay went through several revisions over the following years. In 2010, Carl Ellsworth was hired to produce a new draft. On January 14, 2012, it was reported that Darren Lemke, known for co-writing the script for Shrek Forever After, would write another revision. By November 2012, Stein expressed skepticism about whether the film would ever actually be made, remarking that he would believe a Goosebumps movie was real only when he finally saw it happen. At the time, the screenplay carried a PG-13 rating. Pre-production eventually moved forward in 2014. In mid-April of that year, a 6-person crew spent 3 days in downtown Madison, Georgia, collecting visual reference data for the film. Using a theodolite to map points in three-dimensional space, they conducted a detailed survey that would later help create a CGI recreation of the town's downtown area. According to Moritz and director Rob Letterman, Madison had been their top filming location after scouting several cities. Some things that were planned for the movie included Hannah being Stein's niece rather than his daughter, Champ being a person of color named Dwayne, and the ending had Stein and Zach decide to dispose of the book holding all of the monsters into the ocean once they've been dealt with. Principal photography began on April 23, 2014 in Candler Park in Atlanta. Filming included homes on Mell Avenue NE that served as the houses of the main character Zach and R.L. Stein. Additional shooting locations included the nearby city of Conyers. By May 19th of that year, filming had moved into the streets of Madison, where roughly 480 crew members were working across that town and Morgan County. Principal photography wrapped on July 16th, some months later. During production, a section of Dawsonville highways in Georgia was periodically closed so crews could film a car repeatedly driving across a series of bridges for one of the movie's scenes. To promote the movie, Del Taco released a series of bags with the film's monsters on them. When the film came out on October 16, 2015, less than a month after Hotel Transylvania 2, it got pretty generally positive reviews from critics who praised the film for its comedy as well as being faithful to the Goosebumps franchise, with an approval rating of 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics like Kevin P. Sullivan of Entertainment Weekly giving the film a B rating and said that nothing about Goosebumps is revolutionary. At a certain point you may realize that it's as if Nickelodeon produced Cabin in the Woods, but it's a never-boring trip to a world where stories and imagination are powerful tools that just might inspire kids to do the scariest thing of all, pick up a book. For the box office, Goosebumps grossed out $80.1 million in North America and $70.1 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $150.2 million. It was also nominated for 3 awards: a Las Vegas Film Critics Society Award for Best Family Film, a Visual Effects Society Award for Outstanding Visual Effects Award in a Special Venue Project, and a Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Film. 2 video games based on the movie called Goosebumps the Game and Goosebumps Night of Scares were released around 2015. A few months later, Goosebumps was released on Blu-ray, including both 2D and 3D versions, and DVD on January 26, 2016, which featured several bonus materials, including deleted scenes, a blooper reel, interviews with the cast and crew, and a featurette focusing on Slappy. A show-unrelated movie was released on Disney Plus a few years after the Goosebumps sequel came out and ran from October 2023 to January 2025. Getting into my personal thoughts on the movie, I thought it was pretty good as I liked the designs of the monsters and enjoyed the modern take of the story, and also liked how the real R.L. Stine himself made an appearance. Goosebumps is one of those movies that you watch to get a good scare and a good laugh at, just as any horror comedy would. Less than 2 years later, SPA decided to give the Smurfs another shot, but this time in full animation, with Smurfs: The Lost Village. In this revamp of the little blue creatures, Smurfette, alongside Clumsy Smurf, Brainy Smurf and Hefty Smurf, find out that there are other Smurfs out there after finding a discarded hat, and they set out to search for these new Smurfs while also trying to stop Gargamel when he attempts to find them first, and when they find their village, they see that it is populated by female Smurfs. On May 10, 2012, just 2 weeks after the announcement of the Smurfs 2, Sony Pictures Animation and Columbia Pictures had already begun developing a script for a 3rd installment in the series. Writers Carrie Kirkpatrick and Chris Poche were hired to work on the project. Hank Azaria, who portrayed Gargamel in the first 2 films, later revealed that the planned 3rd movie might explore the original backstory of how the characters first encountered one another. Plans for this 2nd sequel were eventually abandoned in favor of a completely computer-animated reboot. In March 2014, Kelly Asbury was confirmed as the film's director. The new project was intended to explore the origins of the Smurfs while presenting a fresh interpretation of the characters, with designs and environments more closely reflecting the artwork of Peo. Jordan Kerner produced the film, with Mary Ellen Bowder serving as co-producer. On June 14, 2015, Sony Pictures Animation revealed the film's original title, Get Smurfy, along with the first look at the project. On February 12, 2016, the film was officially retitled Smurfs: The Lost Village. The movie was co-financed by Star Capital and Wanda Pictures. Asbury cited several adventure classics as major influences on the film, including Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Goonies. The film's Forbidden Forest setting was also inspired by fantastical worlds such as the Land of Oz from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Pandora from Avatar, and Wonderland from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, creating an environment filled with magical yet dangerous creatures. For the voice cast, Mandy Patinkin, Demi Lovato, and Rainn Wilson were revealed in early 2015 to be the voices of Papa Smurf, Smurfette, and Gargamel, respectively. The only actor who came back from the live-action films was voice actor Frank Welker as Azrael. Getting into some ideas for the film, the girl Smurfs were supposed to have more diverse hair colors. The Lost Village was actually supposed to be all boys like the well-known Smurfs. The origin of the girl Smurfs, and back when this was planned to be the third live-action Smurf movie, it was supposed to be a time travel film with Gargamel going back in time to the Viking era to alter history and capture a younger version of Papa Smurf. I would also like to note that one of the girl Smurfs, Smurf Jade, was voiced by Melissa Sturm, who previously voiced Smurfette in the Smurfs A Christmas Carol short back in 2011 when singer Katy Perry, who voiced her in the live-action films, was unable to reprise her role in that short. For the soundtrack, singer Meghan Trainor, who previously provided the song Better When I'm Dancing for the Peanuts movie from Blue Sky Animation, created a song for the film called I'm a Lady, and singer Shaylee Scott starred in 2 other songs for the film, You Will Always Find Me in Your Heart and The Truest Smurf of All. When the film came out on April 7, 2017, it earned mixed reviews from critics and audiences, who weren't big on the movie's quality, but it is more or less unanimously agreed that it's better than the live-action films. Owen Gleiberman of Variety said in his review that, it's a pure digital fantasy, with elegant and tactile animation, so it's more true to the Smurf spirit and should perform solidly. For the box office, the film managed to gross out $45 million in North America and $152.6 million in other countries for a worldwide total of $197.6 million. For its opening weekend, Smurfs The Lost Village opened alongside the films Going in Style and The Case for Christ, but ended up finishing third in the box office, and the movie was ultimately regarded as a financial disappointment for the studio. Although internal screenings and audience testing had generated optimism, the movie encountered strong competition from other releases aimed at the children and family audience. Christine Belson, president of Sony Pictures Animation, later reflected on the outcome, saying the result was truly heartbreaking. She added that, in hindsight, the film had been scheduled for the wrong release window and acknowledged that the studio had underestimated how successful the DreamWorks film, The Boss Baby, would become. Efforts to move the film further away from its April 2017 release date ultimately failed due to contractual commitments with major promotional partners. Sometime later in 2017, the film was released on Blu-ray, Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on July 11th, and it debuted at number 2 on the Top 20 NPD Videoscan First Alert chart. The movie also has a TV show based on it released on Nickelodeon in 2021 that's still going on to this day. Also, due to the poor box office performance, Sony decided to not make another Smurf movie, though another one was eventually released by Paramount 8 years later in 2025. And it was also a disappointment in the box office and was so bad critically, and I did not go see it in theaters, though part of me got so curious of it that I watched some of it sometime after it began streaming on Paramount+. As for my thoughts on the film, I liked it and consider it to be better than the live-action films, and I'm pretty upset that this adaptation of the Smurfs was only expanded upon in a TV show because there is some good film material to work with this story. Smurfs The Lost Village is the very definition of the word underrated. It's nothing too big but nothing too small either, ironic considering the creatures I'm talking about. And I'm sure most people would have liked it if a majority of audiences gave this movie more credit.